Fun. The panel is called Finding the Elephant's Funny Bone. It's busting the myth that there is a humor gap among Republicans. We have Scott Stantis, Chip Bok, and the two cartoonists from our association. Scott is the staff cartoonist for the Chicago Tribune and originally had drawn Prickly City, which became a popular comic strip. And Chip Bok is the longtime cartoonist for the Akron Beacon Journal. Both considered among the leading conservative cartoonists in the country.
Chip,
and
how are you?
I'm well. How you been?
Very friendly, as you can see. And this discussion will be guided today by Alex Oprea of Duke's Politics and Humor Group. Alex is a fifth-year PhD student in political science, and she's from Romania. And she'll be taking over the discussion from here.
Woo, Romania!
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Adam. It's an honor to be here with Scott and Chip to talk about tickling the elephant's funny bone. If you've been here all day, you know how this is going to go. I'm going to just say a couple of sentences and then give a chance to Chip and Scott to each show you a slideshow of their work and impress you and tickle your funny bones. And then we'll have a discussion with the audience. Hopefully all of you know that you can come forward to those microphones and ask your question and get an answer. Maybe heckle them a little bit, depending on your preference. So I'm Alex. I'm a representative of the class of academics. So my role is to bore you just a second at the beginning of this to set it up for the comedians. And the lesson that I want to maybe throw out there for those of you who may be more inclined to do humor from a more progressive left-leaning side is that at least in the West, the beginnings of political satire in Greece came from a conservative political satirist. His name was Aristophanes. And what made the Greeks laugh at the time were these highfalutin intellectuals coming in with new ideas like communism and redistribution and a free-for-all. And so Aristophanes at the time thought that it would be a pretty nice idea to stage and make fun of these people like Socrates and their airy notions about politics and how wrong they can be. So humor, political satire has a long history. Not all of it has always leaned progressive, and hopefully we'll get an idea for what is missing when we only focus on the progressive side of the conversation. So please join me in welcoming Chip Bok, our first presenter. Thank you.
Well, it strikes me as funny that only at a convention of editorial cartoonists would conservatives thought to not possess humor. I think the rest of the country thinks that the left is humorless because of political correctness. And that certainly doesn't go for the brilliant cartoonists here, most all of whom are from the left except the two of us. However, I was struck by the session this morning. We had Signe, David Horsey, and Steve Breen, who are really great cartoonists and very funny people. But they are all three from either the West Coast or the East Coast. Nobody from in between. And so Scott and I are from what used to be flyover country and is now deplorable country. Although I've been called adorably and deplorably. Anyway, I'm going to show you some cartoons here, and we can talk about this. This is the very beginning. I started out totally skeptical of Trump. I didn't think there was any possible chance that he could be where he is now. And I thought that the establishment Republicans may have made a mistake. And what I was struck by in this morning's session was the discussion of Trump. Most of the cartoons were about Trump. They were hilarious cartoons about Trump. Trump deserved every bit of it. But there was no sense of understanding why people vote for Trump. And that may just be beyond comprehension for any of us. But I do think I have an idea about it. And I think it's because The country is ruled by the East and West Coast elites, and that's the media, popular culture, movies, and cartoonists. And I think it's come to a head with political correctness lately. The vast, deplorable middle has just had all it can take. I think that a good example is gay marriage. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Hillary was against gay marriage until very recently. Obama was against gay marriage until very recently. Now, all of a sudden, if you have some kind of principled or religious reason for not being in favor of gay marriage, it's not just a difference of opinion, you're a bigot. And that's been carried over to this crazy restroom issue. If you have a difference of opinion, you're a bigot. And so I think that people aren't understanding each other. It's like we're almost talking two different languages. And that's really the sense I got from that this morning. This is kind of interesting. Bernie Sanders has really dragged the party left, and David Brock actually called him a socialist wackadoodle. So I thought that's pretty crazy. Now he's a victim of a vast right-wing conspiracy. This is to show, as a conservative cartoonist, it's still a cartoonist's job to not necessarily just promote an agenda, but make fun of people who do stupid things. And Ted Cruz had big donations from Wall Street. His wife works on Wall Street, and so I thought that was a appropriate thing. And here's the Donald. Got to win by 2. The system is rigged. This is, in case you forgot why the voters are angry, there goes the Dennis Hastert motorcade. And Dennis Hastert did terrible things, molesting boys, but this is really about the fact that Dennis Hastert was a Speaker of the House, and before that he was a wrestling coach, and yet somehow he was able to pay millions of dollars to buy the science of these boys. And I think there's a sense that that goes on with every politician in this country, the so-called ruling elite. Trump, not only am I sending illegal immigrants to Mexico, I'm driving annoying celebrities to Canada. And then this gets to the bathroom issue. Just when you get him out of the bedroom. Yeah, now he's in the bathroom. So this is what makes the deplorables upset. This is just a little side issue. This is a mullah. We have free elections, but I choose the candidates. Oh, you're superdelegate. This is Trump bashing the press. He's kicked every one of those people out. Why haven't I taken your press pass? Okay, and then I just wanted to get away from the campaign. I thought this was funny. Like the Tesla autopilot cars, you're not supposed to drive them on autopilot. Anyway, he's talking on his phone. Truck's about to hit him, telling him, look up. Okay. Here's Trump receiving the nomination and bringing the leash to Mike Pence. I like the little curb your pet. Okay, here we go. This is Black Lives Matter. And I was here for the Black Lives Matter presentation, and I thought it was great. And it could be, in fact, I take their word for it, that the killings of blacks, if they say they're racially motivated, I'd accept that. However, this is about narratives. It seems that, especially in this administration, everything's about a narrative instead of the facts on the ground, and then you fill the narrative and create a story around that narrative. I think everybody in here knows that hands up, don't shoot never happened. He never said hands up, don't shoot. Yet a whole narrative has been built around that. Certainly there are grievances. Maybe all the black people that have been killed by police were killed for racist reasons. I don't know. But to say that it's disproportionate is simply false. And Heather McDonald has written extensively and done extensive research about this. blacks are not killed in a greater proportion to the manner in which they commit crimes. In fact, whites are slightly higher, not that it matters. And I don't want to be in the position of having to defend police. I've had plenty of problems with police by my own. In fact, my next door neighbor's son-in-law was killed by police. And they mentioned this, I don't know if it was the same case. It was in Arizona. He flipped out. He was an Iraq veteran. He was last seen going down the street naked, and he was shot by a policeman. He was white. Means nothing in the discussion, totally anecdotal, but so are all these other stories. So there's that. Oh, then back to Trump. Don't vote your conscience, vote for me. Coming out of the convention. These are some sketches I did at the Republican convention in Cleveland. And just this guy on the right, I thought I'd see a lot of guys walking around with guns. And I just saw this one guy. I talked to him, John, the open carry guy, and he was fresh from a meeting with Bernie supporters. And he was an odd-looking guy, but he was just having fun. He's the only guy carrying a gun, advocating gun rights. He wasn't a caricature of the kind of people I've seen who support Trump. The people I see who support Trump, though, they don't seem to care what he says, the ones I've talked to. They just support Trump because Trump is against the politically correct establishment, as far as I can tell. Okay, here's another one. This is after the priest was murdered on the altar, had his throat slashed. And I just thought, well, let's look at this from a different position, because, again, it's about the narrative. You can't blame it on Islamic terror. But if it happened the other way around, radical Christians entered a mosque and beheaded an imam. They aren't real Christians. They're a tiny minority of a great religion. A religion of peace sounds like workplace violence. Get off your high horse. Climate change is the real enemy. This is just fun. More of the narrative. And I do think this is getting upsetting to the terrorists, the ISIS people, whoever the enemy is. First, Obama calls us a JV team. Then he says we're not Islamic. And then Trump calls Obama our founding father. I don't get no respect. And I think there's a lot to that. The narrative is that if you offend the Islamic religion, of which a very small part are terrorists, that the terrorists, that's going to create more terrorist recruits, and so you can't come after them. There's a large body of thought that thinks that's not true, that they're coming after us because of who we are. It's got nothing to do with what we say. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but it doesn't get a lot of attention. Oh, this is just getting off politics, getting off the election. Obamacare, and so the insurance companies were going out, and there are some people that say that would be ideal, because it would move to a single payer plan. This, I didn't really care that Obama did not go down to Louisiana for the hurricane. He stayed on Martha's Vineyard and played golf, except that he was the one yelling the loudest about Bush at Katrina. So I drew that cartoon. And paying ransom, it's not really ransom, depends on the meaning of the word ransom. Cheers, Satan. That was my favorite part. This is the media. Back in the day, those things just said press. I've never seen, everybody knows the media generally leans left, but in this particular election, there are elements of the media who think that Trump is so bad, and maybe he is, but that they have a duty to become more activists, more actively attacking him. And Matt Lauer, what happened to Matt Lauer, I think, is a good example of what happens when you don't attack him enough. Trump goes in the inner city, and really, what connection does Trump have with inner city black people? Like, as he would say, zero. But under his new management, he's reaching out, which is a smart thing to do, I think. And I hope he keeps doing it. And Democrats said to him, you never come to the inner city. He goes to Detroit, a church in Detroit, a church in Philadelphia, reaching out. Sure, it's trying to get votes, but the Democrats have been there forever, and things are not good. So, the U.S. Navy don't get no respect anymore either, or the Air Force. It's the Iranian Navy, sir. Fire cash pallet number 1. Hillary. I hit her a lot, but if you remember in the 2012 election, Biden, affecting his best Hillary black voice, said, they're going to put you all in chains. And so I just tried to bring that over to this. Here's Hillary running for president, and people are running around using hammers to destroy evidence that has been subpoenaed and bleach bit to destroy it. So destroying evidence, subpoenaed evidence. But she's not going to. Oh, here's Hillary. Get well, Hillary. The deplorables, a basket for you. This is Trump. I will build a beautiful child care plan, and the children will pay for it.
What?
This is again about the narratives. This was just, I just did this earlier in the week. We are in a war of narratives. And then, of course, the guy doesn't give a shit. He just cut his head off. You can still say we're in the war of narratives all you want. It's a message. This guy, Obama. I'm sorry. It's a message to African Americans from President Obama. Is he going to cut crime, give a school choice, maybe increase youth employment? No. He's going to be personally insulted if we don't vote for Hillary. What president talks like that? Oh, Scott, you're up.
I'm up.
Well, good luck. I never had to duck behind that thing once, so.
You never what? Hi. Nice to be here. And thanks for listening. Yeah, my first reaction when I heard about this presentation, can everyone hear me okay? So I'm doing the mic all right? Awesome. Is that, first off, I'm a conservative. I grew up in a Republican household. I actually worked on Nixon's re-election campaign in 1972 when I was 13 years old, which explains the strictly adhered to do not date list, apparently. That was created after that. But I came up that way and worked in the Reagan campaigns in 80 and 84, worked in California Republican politics. And so, but like Chip, I consider myself a classical liberal, which may be a term some of you don't know, but it'll be explained through the cartoons, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of background here. I also wanted to complain. May I? Because as a conservative, I want to say, where's my safe zone? Where are my trigger words? Are conservatives funny? I take that personally offensive. I think Chip does too. Do you?
Trigger words? Well, I like pulling triggers.
Anyway, well, that's Chip again. Isn't he brilliant? This is my comic strip. It says taking umbrage. It says go ahead and take some. Everyone else has. So you guys are going to take umbrage at what you're about to see, because humor is something that happens. Humor always has a victim. A joke always has a victim. You slip on a banana peel, it hurts. Someone else slips on a banana peel, that's kind of hilarious, if not just, a metaphor and a cliche. So you are going to take umbrage, some of you. This was one, drug testing in our schools. They want to do it randomly. I think that's a bunch of crap. So I have one teacher saying to the other, I liked it better when they left apples on my desk. This is just one of my favorite cartoons just because. Dick Cheney, I'm showing you some of the oldies and then we'll get to the current politics. Dick Cheney shot someone in the face. Stay with me on this. So this is sorry, I thought you were the Bill of Rights. And so this was in USA Today. I drew it for them. And I got a ton of emails and calls that day from conservatives asking me, seriously asking me, why is this an issue? Because the vice president shot someone in the face. Every 230 years this happens. And it's a big deal. This was when President Obama had just taken office and was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. You can read it, says presented to Barack Obama for... They said, well, we'll fill it out later. I am also deeply Catholic and believe in life at both ends. So I think you have to be consistent on this issue. So I strongly oppose the death penalty. So the first issue here is, they've executed another one, sir. And God said, I say it over and over again, what part of thou shalt not kill do they not get? He says, looks like they're strapping down another one, sir. And God just goes, ah! It's days like this when I really regret the no new floods pledge. The Tea Party is another example of something that I understood its genesis, but I'm not a big fan of lockstep, no new taxes, period, under any circumstances. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't like taxes, and they should be low. But here was the Tea Party and the Republican Party having to swallow it, and she's just going, drink it! I just like the fact that she looks a lot like a little Sarah Palin. Michelle Bachmann, ringing any bells, folks? Former congressman from Minnesota. She won. People forget this. She won the straw poll in Iowa, in the Iowa caucuses. She won it, so I just love this. Dear Lord, what did I do last weekend? It's a tramp stamp that says Michelle be forever. This was from 2012. Donald Trump endorses Mitt Romney and says, you had me at, I don't care about poor people. The Joe Paterno scandal at Penn. I mentioned I'm Catholic. I actually participate a lot in my church. This is how you get your priest not to talk to you for a couple of days. This is when the Republicans retook the House in 2010. I love the look on the president's face and the elephants all. So this was the terrorist. They tried to crack open his phone, and so I just loved how inept the FBI looks. Says, open phone. Calling Obama. Oh, Oprah says, no, open phone. It's 41 degrees. No, open the phone. Recipes for scones. Open the friggin' phone. Says, there's an app for that. Says, so which one are the moderates? Now, okay, dudes, seriously. I'm a presidential history wonk. I love this stuff. And I mean, you can ask me about the election of 1800, and I'll tell you more than you ever wanted to know. There's nothing to compare to this. This election, otherwise known as, what the fuck? Really? Because we got a choice now between a pathological liar and an Oompa Loompa. 320 million people in this country, and this is the choice. Unbelievable. Well, except early on, people were talking about this. I want Bloomberg as my next president, said nobody, ever. And Donald Trump comes out. Okay, I'm not going to show you, but I am a regular on a radio show in Chicago, WGN Radio, Patty Vasquez show. And she continually bet me time after time that whenever Donald Trump said something egregious, horrible, awful, I swore that would be the end of it. That he's done, he's over, this bubble has burst. And she bet me to the point where I had to get waxed on live radio. Yeah, I will not show you what parts got waxed, because she let the listeners vote on what got waxed. I had one veto, and it was the one that came in first, which was my man bag. So I said no, because first of all, it's a glassed-in studio that faces Michigan Avenue. Not going to do that. But yeah, it was back, arm, pit, leg, and nose. Yeah. Look at this. This is gorgeous. Who knew? Anyway, so he comes down the escalator and he says, and some of them I suppose are good people, so the Donald of Liberty. This is all us experts. And I consider myself one of them. I just explained to you. I was certain this was a bubble. But if you look, it says the elephant, and the other candidate says, wait for it. And he's cut the cord, and he's still up there. No one I knew could have predicted this. Well, except for Patty Vasquez. The party of Trump, as the primaries continue to show that he was going to be the eventual nominee, it says, oh, it's got to be a dream. Wake up, wake up, wake up. And I love this one. Anyone objecting to this union, speak now or forever, hold your peace. And she's like... What's weird about my Republican versus Democrat when I was going through this for this presentation is I find I'm harder on Republicans than I am on Democrats. And I think the answer to that is simple, because I expect Democrats to be goofy and not do stuff I like. I expect the Republicans to behave themselves. Yeah, I've been disappointed more than one time for that. So here, after all of the health issues, I'm fine. Hillary, Milhouse, Clinton there. This was another choice! And I got to draw the vice presidential candidates, and drawing Pence is a blast, because he's just this, literally, if you're going to draw him, it's just this. That's it. Little white here, and that's it. Passing the torch. And I just love the Hillary smile, just makes me, because it's so, she has a bit of an overbite, so. Only extremely careless. He is, hands seem, he's plenty big, gasp to me. Anger says, that's my front runner. Plus a T-Rex with Trump hair is kind of funny. Made me giggle. It says, bet those losers never mean tweet my wife again. It's President Trump, the foreign policy. We must end the war on women. Yes, we do. And the Nixon analogy again. This was Trump meets with Mexican President. Hillary saying, how much did Peña Nieto have to donate to the Trump Foundation to get that meeting? We did a great job. Our foreign policy has made the world a safer place. Colin Powell made me do it. I plead the fifth, Inauguration Day 2017. Hillary makes the pitch. Bernie swings. Crack. The ball is going. Home run, Bernie! And according to the Democratic Party rules, Hillary takes the lead. And Uncle Sam saying, I keep hoping I'm not the father. Now, real quick, I want to show you, because about more than half my work is local. And Chicago, if you know anything, and you've heard a few things about it, I have no doubt, is a hilarious place. This was my first cartoon I ever drew on staff of the Chicago Tribune. Governor Blagojevich had just come out with his book, so you see the different sections of nonfiction, fiction, and bullshit. For those of us who like the Cubs a lot, the Blackhawks continually win the Stanley Cup, and the Cubs, someday, kids, someday. And Matt Davis and I actually collaborated because the Mets played the Cubs in the National League Championship Series. Where is he? So this actually ran on the cover of Newsday and also in the Chicago Tribune. So on the left is Matt saying, my team hasn't won the championship since the year I was born, which was 1986. Another one is, rest in peace, great grandpa. It says, tell me about it. But this is the year. Abraham Lincoln, he's demanding that they say land of something else. This is, they changed the speed limit in Illinois and says, so the jobs can leave faster? This is a Blagojevich cartoon, when you stay in jail, do not pass go, do not collect $200. This is the most evil man on the planet. His name is Mike Madigan. He's the Speaker of the House. He's been Speaker of the House in Illinois for 31 years. True story. Bad guy. I won't go into the details other than to say bad guy. So Game of Thrones. I just liked the drawing. We just have a new Republican governor. He is running circles around this guy. So the Governor Rauner is saying, had enough, Mike. Here's Rauner again trying to go up against the unions, which are all powerful there, saying, we can do this. Hand me a rock, anyone, now, hello? We have a budget. Illinois has gotten more than a year without a budget, but the legislators demanded that they get paid. And that become a priority for anyone who is going to get money from them. So I just have Speaker Madigan, and that's on the right. There is the President Cullerton of the State Senate. It says, understand, there are legislators working 2 and 3 scams now just to make ends meet. This is the only piece of my work that hangs in Rahm Emanuel's inner office. And of course, it's him going, "Fuck yeah!" Because he was determined that actually, because he had kept his wife's wedding dress in an apartment or something, that he was a resident of Chicago and could be our mayor. This is the result. He says, name's Bond, Junk Bond. You can put all this on your tab. Welcome to, I'm sorry, Mike Thompson of Detroit News, but sorry, but welcome to Chi-Troit. Come for the pension, stay for the bankruptcy. Says we're getting closer. And of course, there's a $634 million pension payment for the Chicago public schools, and say, we're confident the wall will swerve first. Honest to God, folks, I'm not kidding. It's this bad. The lottery winners do get IOUs. I'm not kidding. This is true. Because I should have played in Indiana. The legislature, of course, then goes on vacation, comes back and says, I'm back. Did you miss me? I just like the little doggy skeleton. I just thought that was cute. It's so bad, Oprah left. I'm not, again, not kidding. So Hamilton's coming to town, everyone's excited. So it says, the storyline, powerful Democrats scheme and plot, and some people get shot. It says, then shouldn't it be called Illinois? And this is another quick story I did, How to Draw Rahm. When he became mayor, I drew this up. And this is to show you how humor gets lost on some people who are far too serious and think far too much and deeply about what we do. This was step-by-step how to draw. You can see up the top, I'll blow it up. To get started, think about whom your subjects look like, E.T. and the Grinch. I got a call that morning this ran. And she said, are you the one who drew that cartoon about the mayor this morning? I go, yeah, I did. Have you always been anti-Semitic? Not always. No, I said, huh? She says, you did a drawing of a caricature of our first Jewish mayor, and why did you choose two things that were created by Jewish creators? E.T., Steven Spielberg, and the Grinch, who was Geisel, who Dr. Seuss, was also happened to be Jewish. And I had to tell her, ma'am, you thought about this way more than I ever did. So that's the nature. Now I guess we're going to open up for questions, right? Thank you.
Thank you very much to our panelists, and I'd like to invite the audience to join us with their questions.
Can we see your shirt?
Yes. Bill the Johnson. We have a disagreement. I like Gary Johnson. I met him on an editorial board meeting at the Chicago Tribune, and he actually came on my podcast, he and Governor Weld. And so it's a happy compromise for someone like me who thinks Trump is a troll and has no business being in charge of anything. And Hillary, being from the big basket of deplorables myself, I find that a hard vote. So he's my compromise candidate. And I, as I mentioned earlier, classical liberal, which is libertarian in nature. So I feel the Johnson, baby. Wow, that didn't sound right at all.
No.
Hi, I'd like to ask if you, first of all, I enjoyed your presentations. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask if you get liberal hate mail and how it compares to at least the folklore about conservative hate mail. We heard people talk this morning about getting letters, burn in hell and you're a cunt and things like that, and I'm wondering whether liberals are as poorly mannered and what their rage looks like for you guys.
I came home one night, it was the build-up to the Iraq War, and I regretted this now, but I strongly supported it then. I came home late, and my wife is sitting on the couch sobbing. And I said, honey, what's wrong? And she goes, I looked up your name. And on many message boards, people said, I hope his two kids are drafted and killed in Iraq. So the myth of the kindly, sweet-natured liberal is exactly that, a myth. I've had death threats from the left, many of them, and threatening other threats. I'm sure you have too.
I'm sure there are kindly, sweet-natured liberals. I just don't hear from them. They're very mean. All of you, any cartoonist has gotten death threats, hate mail, and I get just as much of it, if not more, from the left as anyone would from the right, I'm sure.
And frankly, it's just as irrational, much of it, I assume. I mean, I talk to my other cartooning friends who get it from the other side, and it's curious. The discussion, what's gotten weird about the discussion now and what makes humor difficult in this context is that I don't just make fun of or disagree with your politics. I disagree with your motives. Because you're not just, for a tax increase. You're not just for this bond issue. You're doing that because you hate America. You want to take everything I have and give it to an immigrant. I mean, it's insanity. And it makes humor difficult. Because both sides have become humorless.
I really agree with Scott on that. I think that people have an idea of the way things should be, and it's the idea of narratives again. Any cartoon that I might draw or anything that someone might say, they run it through a filter that it doesn't really pertain to what I'm saying, and they have their own agenda. The idea is, you have ill will. You're bad. It's not just your ideas don't work. It's not just you're not talking about a sound system of thought. It's that you're bad, and that goes to both sides. I don't think either side talks to each other or debates.
Well, now you've triggered a follow-up question, if you'll indulge me. Okay. Do you ever get the sense that your work is changing anyone's mind, or at least opening their mind or softening their positions? We hear a lot about how these cartoons reinforce the existing bias of the reader. So if they're on your side, they love you. If they're opposed, they hate your guts. But do you think you ever make a difference? You hear any feedback from people saying, gee, you've opened my eyes on this, or I'm not taking such a hard line anymore?
That's a really good question, and the answer for the most part, disappointingly, is no. People tend to read the things that reinforce their own beliefs and not so much to have their minds changed. However, what I try to do is look at things differently in a cartoon, and when somebody tells me, gee, I never really looked at it that way, I never really thought of it that way, it's not going to change their mind, but at least to cause somebody to think about an issue a little bit differently is really rewarding and a reason to keep on doing it as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree more.
Well, your motives suck.
It's because I hate America and I want the terrorists to win. No, I think there are instances I can point to, especially in local cartoons, particularly local cartoons. National cartoons, I think we help perpetuate or drive the narrative, and I think decide on, depending and define it. But on local issues, I am very confident that my cartoons have had an impact. But it doesn't happen you don't do one cartoon and everyone goes, oh my gosh, it's an epiphany. We're going to be better people and do this Scott's way. It's a matter of doing it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Working in, the Michael Madigan cartoons clearly have raised his. People were unaware of how he was running the state of Illinois. I mean, it had been reported, but cartoons had never been attacked in that way. Back when I worked at the Birmingham News, I can tell you that I had an effect on at least 2 gubernatorial candidates. So, yeah, I think it can. I don't think it's one cartoon doesn't change the world, but a series can definitely.
Hey, I had a question about how you approach Hillary as conservatives. When you're drawing Hillary, do you ever stop and consider how far you're going to take the caricature, how mean you're going to dial up the dial? Are you concerned about crossing a line where people are going to look at? I look at a number of conservative cartoonists, and they go full bore at Hillary, and she's fat, and she's ugly, and she's wrinkly, and I look at those, and I just think, boy, they're just speaking only to the choir. Most people would sort of go, oh boy, that cartoonist has mama issues or something like that. When you approach Hillary, are you aware of sort of the minefield of sexist imagery that you're wandering into, or is that being politically correct?
Yeah, I think it is being politically correct. I don't think you're going to run for president, you're going to be subjected to this kind of, thing. I worked in, again, Birmingham, Alabama, where it was at the time, 77% African American. And the cartoonist I succeeded at that paper had never drawn an African American in the 11 years he was there. It was bizarre. So when I started drawing them, it was sort of a surprise, but I was just as brutal because you were in a position. You have to be conscious of, first off, I want it to look like her. I want you to be able to see the cartoon and identify who I've drawn. But because honestly, this is how far we've come in terms of the Republican Party. I really thought the first African-American president and the first woman president would be Republican. That's coming up in the 80s, I really thought, they'd be socially moderate, they'd be fiscally conservative, they'd get the cover of the Republican Party and get elected. Obviously, that's not where we are today, and it's really too bad. But as far as caricaturing, I can say if you have a big nose, I'm going to draw a big nose. If you have wide hips, I'm going to draw you with wide hips. If you are heavy, I draw Donald Trump like he weighs 600 pounds, because that's what I want to project, in terms of posture, in terms of caricature. If you disagree with this person, then you're going to draw them unattractively.
I think the point you made at first is my main concern, and that's that I make it look like Hillary so people know who the heck I'm drawing. There is, if you draw a woman in a very unflattering way, you're going to get feedback from it. At least I do. When I first started drawing Hillary, she used to wear dresses, and she had fat legs, and I drew fat legs, and I got more criticism over that than anything. And she switched to pantsuits now. So I just try to capture the essence of Hillary in my drawing, and if it's not very attractive, it's not very attractive. But I don't go out of my way to. Well, I did draw her as a witch not too long ago, but for the most part, I don't go out of my way to. I try to make the cartoon itself express what I think of Hillary.
So to follow up on some of this conversation, we've been talking about the impact of your cartoons, but I'm interested in how you think of your audience, and maybe you two might have differences about what you're intending to do despite the impact. Are you thinking of yourselves as the gadflies that the Republican Party might be missing, the people that are insiders who might be listened to by the conservative crowd? Or are you thinking about addressing the liberals and pointing out to them the things that are missing when they're looking at the world from maybe a very limited perspective? So I'm curious.
Well, I like to flatter myself that I don't care what anyone thinks when I'm drawing a cartoon, but that's just a lie. It's not true. Especially now in the internet age, I've mentioned before, people tend to read the things they agree with and not the things they don't agree with. And cartoons that I do that are not critical of the left, of Democrats, don't get as much response as ones that are. So that's in the back of my mind when I draw it, but I still try to take a fair shot from my own perspective of what is fair in a cartoon. So, I'm going to make fun of a Republican, I certainly do it. But yeah, it's in my mind. I know about it. I think about it.
I'm like Chip. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't thinking about it. But being a red cartoonist in a deeply blue state in Illinois, it's fascinating. I mean, you have to wonder if you're doing a particularly virulent conservative cartoon, what the reaction to it's going to be. It's usually not good. It's negative, but you do get a response. And maybe that's the best you can hope for on those types of days. Is that maybe you're getting them, and when they call or write and you can engage them, it can become an interesting conversation, or they can just tell you they hope you're dead.
That's a shame. I want to invite the audience, if they feel comfortable, to join us at the microphones. But if not, I can continue prodding you with some of my own thoughts on this. I must admit that I'm surprised that, as a Romanian, I'm surprised that American satire leans a little left. I mean, in my country, we had a communist party, and so if there's going to be poking fun at political figures, it's the corruption and the lingering legacy of the left. And so I wonder if you've thought about it, given your position as pretty unique individuals who get dragged out as the conservatives, why it is that you are in such a minority. What is it that makes people more willing to lean left in this particular context?
For one thing, it's an easier way to get a job in this context. The question I guess you're asking is, how did it get that way in the first place? And I don't really know the answer to it. I just know that the popular culture is left-leaning and has been that way. Progressivism, to me, is not really a liberal movement. It's Woodrow Wilson was a racist. There were a lot of people involved in the early progressive movement who, for example, wanted to use abortion to limit the black population and the so-called undesirables. And today, no one would say that, but still, the progressive movement always struggles against the U.S. Constitution and the restraints on big government, and that's because people in that movement, it's a way to power, and I think maybe that's it. It's more of a way to wield power than do any particular good, although that's the pretext of it.
I can't add much more to that. It's been a question I've asked myself for a long time. And, given that most newspaper editors, especially back in the day when people of a certain age were being employed by newspapers, the papers tended to be pretty conservative. So it was interesting. I think there's something about artists that tend to have them lean left. And that's why we're a bit of a rarity. Not a bit, we are. Mm-hmm. And I think the country, too, you touched on progressivism. The country does lean left, although not hard left or by any stretch. And so, we're also a minority part of the thinking of the population. So I think maybe reflective of that as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I continue to be surprised, and maybe the audience has some thoughts, given that you all might identify more towards the progressive left than the panelists here. Maybe there are some thoughts that the audience would like to share on why there might be a perceived dearth.
Sorry, I've been
A
drinking.
little early in the day to be drinking, dude.
It's never early. Well, I was thinking, when the three of us were first members of this organization, I think it seemed, my sense was there was much more of an ideological mix. So I'm trying to figure out how we missed getting rid of you two. Just kidding. But clearly,
I live in Chicago. They shoot people every day. I just make it look like an accident.
I've got a lot of thoughts for you guys, but I know the last couple of years I've been very bothered by it's almost beyond polarization in this country. That I said earlier this morning, it's like two realities, and I think you guys are talking about that from a different perspective as well. It's an unhealthy thing for the country.
It's incredibly unhealthy.
You can't just have disagreements. It's down to sort of blood feud, and I don't know, you can rap some more. I just wanted to do that line about getting rid of it. I don't have a real question. but yeah, it has made me less, I still love what I'm doing, but there are some days where I think, I don't know if I want to contribute to this anymore, this anger and division. And
I couldn't agree more. I'm having those same feelings that it seems like I'm slapping this against, I'm talking to the, you asked about that. We're talking to the audience, and you're talking to the echo chamber, and it's not being disseminated to expand the conversation, and it's just, I have to admit, I'm not sure if you share this feeling, it's incredibly frustrating to the point of, why the hell am I doing this? I'm still doing it. No one apply at the Chicago Tribune, I'm still there. But truly, I don't know how you break through that wall. And maybe those walls are too high. First off, they were built and they're being paid for by Mexico. So that's kind of an awesome part of it. Seriously, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm feeling a level of frustration I've never felt in terms of audience interaction.
Well, I think also that the two parties, the polar areas of thought are changing. They're actually becoming less ideological and just us against you. The Republican Party, where the hell do they stand? that's what a lot of this revolt is. There's no conservative ideology about it. And Trump, no one could call him a conservative. He's never been a conservative. He never will be. It's something else. It's something other than that this great mass of unwashed deplorables is upset about. And it's an us versus them. I think it's us against our rulers. Somebody this morning mentioned she's from upstate New York, and how bad people are, they're not starving, but they're just not progressing, to use a word. Life isn't what it should be under the current system. And they see the leadership as an elite ruling class that's responsible for that. And I think that's more the dynamic than any kind of ideology. And as for your thing, David, about what happened to our group, that you're stuck with the two of us is like, yeah, I don't really know. Like Jeff McNally was leaned right. He was one of the greatest cartoonists of all time. And why aren't there more Jeff McNallys? I don't know.
Yeah. Thanks for talking about the echo chamber, something that we see a lot. And Ben Rhodes, the speechwriter for Mr. Obama, actually said the media is acting as our echo chamber.
Yeah.
And what I see, like, let's say in foreign policy, I don't see much from the left side scrutinizing Obama's policies and politics in the Middle East, especially the mess in Syria or the Iran deal. So many people just follow the narrative. But thanks to your great cartoons about the ransom that's not considered ransom by so many people here.
Yeah.
And because as an Iranian, I know what ransom means for the Iranian politicians. It is ransom. It looks like ransom, so it is ransom. So
you're telling me that big pallets of unmarked bills would be ransom?
And the funny thing is that the White House said that we couldn't wire money, but then just yesterday we found out, the U.S. has wired money in the past to Iran. So
it could be like a big check, like a lottery check?
Yeah, possibly, yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think it's great that you brought up that New York Times piece about Ben Rhodes openly bragging about the narrative and how he uses narrative to manipulate the media, bragging about it. So.
Well, there's fear and fear of media, and I mean, look at Donald Trump gets literally hundreds of millions of dollars of free advertising and free exposure because every time he says something remarkably stupid, which is daily, he gets massive play across all platforms and news coverage, and it's crazy. Should you ignore him? Well, that would be not covering the Republican nominee, which would be equally nuts. But the fact is, there becomes this narrative, and then it becomes self-fulfilling, and that's a real frustration. To David's point, you can talk about the small minutia of issues that nobody gives a crap about. Reapportionment, which is a crime in every state of this union, Democrat or Republican. The voters no longer pick the politicians now pick the voters. And there's something very undemocratic about that. But try a cartoon about that and see how many, you won't get any angry letters on that one. Believe me, and those are the types of issues that in the past, because we kind of had a monopoly as newspapers addressing these issues, we could, from time to time, bring up things like that. I don't know that we have that option anymore. So, and that's where the frustration grows as well. Yes, ma'am.
You have another question?
Hi, I wanted to thank you for being here today. I was at one of the earlier panels, and they mentioned like a recognized norm of you don't insult people's children as like a boundary that you don't cross in editorial cartoons. And I was wondering if maybe it's just the two of you, but the group of conservative cartoonists, if there are some accepted norms and how much that's shaped by your reader base.
I think that depends on what happens. If like the Trump children go forward and inject themselves in a campaign, well, that gives you free rein to comment on them. I'd say if the parents, like the Obama children, they've made a very conscious decision to keep them out of the limelight. Apparently, two great kids. Why bring them up? There's no reason. So yeah, there is. I mentioned earlier my children have been threatened, and I didn't like it very much, and there was no reason for that. You can threaten me all you want. I'm used to that, but. I'm sure I'm the same. I'm sure most everyone is that
Small children who live at home who have nothing to do with the campaign should be off limits. Why would you pick on them? Of course, Jimmy Carter did ask his daughter publicly for advice on nuclear weapons.
Nuclear proliferation, yeah. Well, it worked.
But
They didn't have
politicians
nuclear
do that. They use their children to their advantage, and so we're not supposed to come back at them. And I think in the main, it's a good idea not to. Except, that guy, his kids are all over the place, and they're part of the,
Yeah.
they're certainly fair game in every way.
Hi, thanks guys for being here. I was going to ask what, you guys were talking about your backgrounds a little bit at the beginning. What role do you think personal perspective takes when commenting on such sort of wide base issues like this, and what limitations do you think that puts on what you're like allowed to say or create or put out there?
Why are we the way we are?
Head trauma.
Yeah. I fell down, I bumped heads with Hillary. I started, when I first started out, I think I've always been, I don't know, growing up, the idea of the founding of the country and the separation of powers, constitutionalism, I really was impressed and believed that was a great thing. And that was a big part of liberalism also, and I think I would be considered more liberal when I first started out. As time went on, I became more skeptical, which, by the way, is our job. We're supposed to be skeptical. And if everybody's saying the same thing and playing off of the same talking points in the media, that's not skepticism. And so, especially when someone in government says something, it's our job to be skeptical about it and make fun of it if there's a way to do it. And then I think I took that role more seriously as I went along and gained more freedom at my paper. And eventually I had complete freedom to do whatever I wanted and probably became, you'd call it more conservative, I guess.
I grew up I was actually the son of immigrants, from mostly French. And so in France, politics is, blood sport. There's a great line that Americans care what you do, they don't care what you say. In France, they care what you say, they don't care what you do. And that's pretty true. Politics was always this rich discussion all the time in our household. We go up to our grandparents' house, and the same thing was true. I can remember, in fact, Tony Auth, the great cartoonist, gave me a cartoon on this issue when the Gaullists were kicked out of France, and Mitterrand was elected president, the socialist president of France. Going to school the next day in high school, again reconfirming the geek narrative here, and said, "Wow, can you believe the Gaullists got kicked out?" And just blank stares. So it was always a passion, and so as I got older, read libertarian works, read stuff by Hayek, read Milton Friedman, read Reason magazine, and got to know, like Virginia Postrel, the former editor there, and grew and just got fascinated by that way of thinking. National Review and William F. Buckley was another huge influence, because it took ideas and gave them intellectual form, and for someone like me, that was important. I knew I thought these things, but I didn't know why. And so those people were able to put meat on those bones.
It's funny you mentioned William F. Buckley, because before then, I think conservatism was not very well formed and not very respectable, and there was a John Birch influence, and Buckley kicked those people out, and
now they're back.
While they were there, he had firm ideas that were reasonable, and Virginia Postrel and Reason kind of carried it.
Yeah, we kind of grew up on that stuff. It was the idea that again, socially tolerant, fiscally conservative, those types of things. And how do you reaffirm those? And so, not very funny, I'm afraid, but fascinating nonetheless for guys like us.
Yeah.
Yes?
Hi, I want to say, as a someone who grew up in Chicago, that I can't think of a better preparation for this particular election than
Go Cubs.
being in Illinois. Go Cubs.
Go Cubs.
This is our year.
Yes, finally.
Definitely.
Anyone can have a bad century.
I'd like to ask you both, you talked about how unexpected this year has been politically and about the frustration and skepticism people have about the system. How much of that do you think is due to Citizens United and the often undisclosed role of corporations in campaign finance? And as wealthy individuals like Sheldon Adelson and the Koch brothers take over more and more of a role, how do you bring that into your political cartoons?
It's both sides, by the way, that have that funny money. I mean, Hillary it looks like they're going to be they reached over $1 billion this week on fundraising for the PACs and all that stuff. I think it's egregious. I think, I'm going to sound incredibly unlibertarian now. I hate Citizens United. I think that's preposterous that companies are people and that you have unfettered amounts of money in these campaigns. It's ridiculous, in my view. But now would I legislate against it? I think I'd have some serious troubles with that, as the Supreme Court obviously has ruled on that as well.
Well, the problem of corporations having a voice in politics is corporations are not people too. They're corporations and they can privatize their earnings back to their shareholders, but they socialize the risk. And so that does make it a problematic issue. But the Citizens United case was about a movie that they financed that was critical of Hillary Clinton. And one of the questions in the court case before the Supreme Court was, if this were a book, would you censor this book? Would you ban the book because this company produced it? And the Solicitor General had to say yes. I mean, that's the only logical position he could take. That's untenable. You can't censor anything for any reason, and just because you're a big bad corporation, you can't be silenced, even though corporations are not people. New York Times is a corporation, Dow Jones is a corporation, everything's a corporation, and you have to have faith in the free combat of ideas. One idea should be challenged by another idea, not by shutting ideas down.
So maybe pressing a little bit on what is changing with the Republican Party and how you associate with these distinctions, do you feel that the fiscal conservatism might get you more allies from the other side, but it's the social conservatism that is perhaps the least easy to talk about or get people to laugh about? Is that where people are getting aggressive, mean, and sending you hate mail? Whereas when you say, well, we should rein in our budget, people are like, well, yeah, I guess there's something to be said for that.
Neither of these candidates is talking about reining in a budget. Trump just introduced this huge child care program. I have no idea how, he thinks he knows how he's going to pay for it. Hillary's been dragged by Sanders farther to the left, and she's going to give free tuition to everybody. So fiscal responsibility does not seem to be on the table anywhere. Social conservatism, I think, I think that is an issue. I think that it's gone so far that you can't criticize anything. Well, I think religious freedom has become an issue, and a lot of that came through Obamacare. And religious freedom is really just freedom of conscience, and we're talking about the government forcing you to do something that violates your conscience. In this particular case, provide abortion drugs to women or birth control pills. If you firmly believe that that violates your religious conscience, that's a big problem. And I think that beginning with that, the whole social movement has grown. The political correctness idea, the things I mentioned before, gay marriage, everybody, you can choose your sex, you can choose your race. These are things that were not even on the table 10 years ago, and change has come so fast. I think it's created a lot of anger and disillusionment with people.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think I lean a little left from that perspective. From coming at it from the sideways, I don't like government. I don't trust it. I'm cynical of it. So anytime it tries to interfere in any aspect of my life, I bristle, and I hate that. And I like to err on the side of freedom on some issues. We're facing some difficult questions. I mean, gay marriage is one where I was against it 10 years ago. I'm very much like the president, and when he said I evolved on it, I evolved on it and came around, and I wanted to think about it long and hard and be sure. Came to, I'm just one little guy, but I came to the conclusion that, yeah, that was the right thing to do in this country. The rest of it, I don't care where you pee. I honest to God don't care. I really don't. If you take a camera in there, if you molest a child, you've broken laws that are already on the book. So, I mean, it's one of those, can you just leave me alone? That's.
I agree with you on both those things. I don't care where you pee either, and I don't care what you do. But you can understand how there are a lot of people out there who don't want their daughter to have to take a shower with some guy, and it upsets them. And you're really going to touchy areas to people who've experienced a lot of change that they had not been expecting.
Yeah.
Let's take one more question from the audience, please.
Okay, it's not so much a question as an observation. Scott, you mentioned, I was very surprised. As a Republican, I thought the first black would be, black president would be a Republican.
Yeah.
Or the first woman Republican, but it just so happens that I think one of the two candidates voted for Barry Goldwater.
Yeah, she was,
and she could become president of the United States.
Hillary was a Goldwater girl. Yeah. I don't know if there's any pictures of
that. So you may be right.
You think she may be a clandestine Republican? At the inaugural, she'll lift up her mask and it's Barry Goldwater. That'd be hilarious.
There was a lot of Reagan at this year's Democratic National Convention, surprising amounts perhaps. I thought we were going to get a question from the audience. So let me perhaps draw it to a close to ask you what you think the world will be like after the Republican Party. So I've noticed that both of you have been seeing some of the internal tensions and the profound tensions brought to the fore by Trump. What do you think is coming for conservatives in America after this election? What are your predictions or maybe your pessimistic expectations about where this is going?
The greatest sin you can commit in politics, and like I said, I worked in it for a few years, the greatest sin, the only sin that matters in politics is losing. That's it, everything else. So my fear is, A, if Donald Trump is elected, because I think he'll be a horrible totalitarian president, but I also think that even if he comes close, other candidates will look at that as the model for how to run in the future. I'm going, damn.
Well, I think that there are a lot of big thinkers in the Republican Party who are never Trumpers, and they will not vote for Trump. And to your point, the worst thing in politics is losing. And so it's very strange to find these smart people who are willing to lose with what's at stake, because whoever wins this presidency is going to appoint Supreme Court justices, and that's going to change the country permanently. If Hillary wins, it will cement the progressive movement of the country, and it'll take a long time to overcome it. So I don't know. I really don't know what it'll be like. Maybe it won't matter, because technology is such an amazing unpredictable thing, and human capital is something that still exists, that changes things in such great ways we can't even imagine. I think that what's really going to happen is, regardless of who's in power, one person in the United States is going to have a job. And that one person is going to produce everything in the world, and we're just going to reap the benefits of it somehow or other. I don't know.
No, the Republican Party is going to have to retool. It's going to have to retool its rules. It's going to have internal function. You better believe that the elites are not going to allow this to happen twice. So I would suspect in 4 years you're going to have very much a common run-of-the-mill candidate become the nominee, and if it's around, I mean, this could be, the Republicans are, the House, I mean, the Senate looks like it's going to be extremely close. They're going to hold on to the House, and they're going to, the chances are good that they're going to lose the White House. So all of those things put together, they're going to have to put together and decide. You touched on it. Fiscally conservative, maybe a little more tolerant on social issues, and then I think you have a winning recipe, and it's contrary to the Democratic platform. So, I hope they do that. Otherwise, they're going to be the Whigs, and we'll be voting for some other, the Libertarian, Gary Johnson.
You go, Gary.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to once again thank our panelists here as
Thank you.
a rare voice. We appreciate you being here.